Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
And guys, as you can see, we got our guy Robbie back joining us again. He did so dang good filling in for me when I was on vacation. We figured, man, we just got to get this guy back in for another visit right away. And, you know, this is kind of what the intro sounds like when the music doesn't just keep going. I just felt like I could throw that out there. Well, welcome back to the show, man.
Appreciate it. I was expecting you to start rapping on top of this beat that we got going on, and maybe that's the next intro. That's the next practice.
I don't think anybody wants to hear that. But before we
me either.
Well, no, I wouldn't want to hear it back on recording either. I try to listen to this as well. But look, I wanted to just give a quick summer general kind of shout out topic before we go ahead and talk some Pistons stuff. I today, all day today, I'm doing Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops proud. I'm just doing yard work morning to dinner here. So I wanted to ask you guys, what is a big yard work project we've got going on so that maybe we can crowdsource some solutions for it? What do you think?
Oh gosh, I can jump in. It's not a project anymore, but my yard has the most mulch beds of anyone in my neighborhood, and it's just ordered over 100 bags. It wasn't enough. I went to pick up more and knocked that out maybe a month ago, and I'm just strategizing for future years. I'm okay, I think I'm gonna do front yard 1 year, backyard the next, and rotate so it's not so crazy. But yeah, that's just a headache in my life.
I've got the exact opposite problem at the moment. There are few planting beds. All of them are mostly overgrown at the new place that we're at, and there's just a ton of weeds in there. None of them are mulch, none of them are stone, nothing like that. So now it's getting into the yard. That's all kind of, today is weed and grass. That's all I'm doing, and it's going to take me 8 hours. It's a great time. Robbie, go ahead.
Yeah, if I showed you guys a picture of my backyard right now, I would be 100% embarrassed because he's actually in here. I'll see if I can. This big guy, when he goes outside, there's just a lot. So it kills all my grass. So last October did a giant overseed project, getting aeration and seed and all that. And so at this point, kind of Blake, what you said, you just kind of learn year by year what works. And so I got crabgrass in the backyard. I'm missing grass because of him killing the grass. So big overseed project, probably late September, early October. I live in Nashville, so we've had top 90 degree humid heat for the last several weeks, and the grass has been torched. So we'll bring it back to life though once it gets a little cooler.
Yeah, that's kind of what I discovered. Actually, we've got 2 dogs, so similar problem there. Mm-hmm. And my discovery was basically every fall you just gotta seed the backyard.
Yep.
Just to give it a shot.
Mow low, get all that dead grass out of there, and then seed and aerate and bring it back to life. It is fun though. A lot of hard work, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah, it's satisfying.
I like when it works.
Mm-hmm.
It's satisfying.
I've had so many yard projects I set out and it just doesn't happen for whatever reason. It's an utter failure, and then now that doesn't feel too good.
Yeah, same. I am lucky though that we have a lot of trees, which is a pain in the fall, but it does give our yard a lot of shade. So even if we do get a lot of sun, the yard survives pretty well. But it's kind of just a pick your poison, because I have to go through hundreds of yard bags, cleaning up leaves in the fall. So it's always something.
All right, let's just keep this off-season conversation going and actually dive right into the pre-submitted questions that we got on DetroitBadBoys.com, which you guys, of course, should be checking out if you aren't already. First one here, this is from Stones 1981. It says, do you guys have any recommended books or TV shows to read and watch during the off-season? So, guys, what are we reading and watching right now?
Robbie, you take the floor. You're our guest.
Stones. I have not read a book in who knows how long, so I cannot recommend any books to you. Blake and I got to bond on our last episode over Love Island.
Yep.
So if you love reality TV, I would go Love Island. But
you
if
may
you
or
want
may not
something
have
else,
skipped through that, by the way. Like you guys got to know
I don't blame you. I'm
That's
sure
fair.
most people fast forwarded through. But I would say Severance. We got done watching Severance recently when that last season closed, and we absolutely love Severance. A very thrilling show. That was a fun one.
Yeah, Severance is a great show. That's a good one. Yeah, Love Island is over now, so I guess it's just crazy. It's episodes every day, so you kind of get your life back.
Yeah.
Other shows I've sort of dropped off, but on Apple TV, there's that newer show called Stick with Owen Wilson, and he's like a golfer, and it's kind of like a lighthearted comedy. So I need to catch up on recent episodes, but other than that, book wise, haven't had a ton of time to read lately, honestly. But the most recent book I read, which it's like a hefty one, so just like read it over time. But The Athletic released like a basketball 100, and essentially it just goes through like top 100 NBA players ever and their rankings, and each one has the different writers over there, like whether it's anecdotes or like if it's someone from the early days of the NBA, like going back on their background a little bit. So it's like fun and pick up a few things here and there. So definitely recommend that for anyone listening, because obviously you all would be interested in the same thing as well. And I think they have a similar thing for other sports too. Like I think there's a football 100 and maybe baseball as well.
Have you come across any Pistons already on that list?
I believe there was, who was in, I think some of like like Isaiah was definitely up there. Dennis Rodman was in there for sure. And I'm trying, Lambier, or no, I'm sorry, not Lambier. Bob Lanier was in there for sure. And then I'm trying to remember if there was anyone from the 04 team. I think probably Ben was in it. But yeah, I'd have to go back through. It was a fun list. And it was released recently too. So like the Lukas and the Tatums and like Jokic and all that are in there as well.
Cade will be on the next edition for sure.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Real quick, any like non-basketball book stuff from either of you? I mean, I'm sure that Stone's 1981 appreciates the basketball, right? But it's the off season. Maybe you want to take your mind off sports a little bit. So I don't know. What do you guys have anything for that? And then
reality TV. You want to just melt your brain, turn on Love Island, and just binge those episodes. You're good to go.
Reading wise though, I'm like a pretty big nonfiction guy. I'd like to get into some like novels and stuff. I do have, there's like if anyone's, I feel like I need to branch out and like go outside of sports, but like that's kind of what I read about. I do have a new book about tennis, which I'm excited to read. It's about like the new rivalry between Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner. So I'm excited about that one. But yeah, overall, like my reading is very nonfiction heavy, like a lot of autobiographies or whatever it might be. But I've actually been thinking about getting a Kindle. My wife just got one, and like I don't know. If I was reading, I didn't want to like look at a screen, but it like doesn't feel like you're looking at a screen. So like that's probably one of my next purchases, and I hope that upkicks my reading as well. Wes, I feel like you're probably the most like diverse reader.
He's gonna give us some kind of econ book that he's been reading.
Well, so yeah, Robbie's correct on that. I was gonna say like diverse is maybe not the right word for that, because all my active books are nonfiction, but probably not in the way that would excite a lot of people. So like I've got Human Action going on right now. You talk about a hefty book that's over 1,000 pages. But that's Ludwig von Mises. It's been very good so far. I just started off Risk, Uncertainty, and Profit by Frank Knight. That's on my iPad. So I like to have two books at the same time, one physical, one over on the iPad. And then I also want to get up to that Milton Friedman biography, which sounded good. It came out a couple of years ago at this point. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I have one nonfiction book that I really liked that I probably read maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago now, is A Gentleman in Moscow, which I know by the title probably sounds familiar to the other or similar to the other things I listed off. It's not, has nothing to do with economics at all. It's just a very, very good story, very good book. They actually turned it into a little Paramount miniseries with Ewan McGregor at some point last summer. And that was okay. The book was better. For TV, I love rewatching the sitcom stuff. So I'm rewatching 30 Rock right now. That's been a good time for just to turn off your brain sort of thing. And then I want to watch Taboo. I've seen some clips and that looks pretty good, but I haven't started it yet. So that's kind of a recommendation for myself, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like TV is kind of going, and it might just be I am not watching the right stuff, but I feel like it's going through a bit of a lull right now. I remember in the Robbie, you mentioned Severance. It was Severance, White Lotus, all these awesome TV shows. So I don't know. Hopefully it kicks up. It would be nice if that season hit when basketball is in the off season for sure.
I feel like movies too. I feel like movies too have taken a little bit of a drop off, but I will say there's a scary movie coming out in
Weapons,
called Weapons.
I want to see,
and
that.
I am so excited to go see that movie. So we'll have to do a movie review next time on our thoughts on Weapons.
I'm not a horror movie guy at all, but I will say I do think this summer is there have been 3 movies that I'm excited to go see. I haven't gotten to go see them yet, but I would really like to go see at least one of the 3 before they all exit theaters. So the Mission Impossible movie, Superman, and then guys, I'm pumped about The Naked Gun. That's my kind of comedy right there. I'm real excited to go see that one. Yeah.
Wes, have you seen F1?
I haven't watched that one yet. That's on the list. I think I'm probably going to wait till it comes out on some sort of streaming service first. So.
Same. I want to see that one. I mean, I went to I saw Friendship in theaters and I forget what else. But I watched Sinners at home when that came out. That was a good one.
Was that a horror movie? I couldn't figure that out.
It's kind of
weird.
More thriller.
Weird? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's just an unexpected zombie. I don't know. You just don't think it would kind of be a zombie, a dead movie, but it is.
Yeah.
It got great scores. My girlfriend and I watched it, and at the end we were that was just kind of a strange movie, I guess. The premise of it was weird, but
yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, I wouldn't classify it as a horror. I'm weirdly not a big scary movie guy either, but if it's a really good scary movie, I'll watch it. But I don't know. I don't know if I enjoy them per se.
Here's my problem with scary movies. All right, it's that there's no middle ground. The movie's either so bad I'm just making fun of it the whole time, poking holes every which way, or it's really effective and I'm freaked out and not having a good time. There's no middle ground for me where it's this is slightly thrilling and I'm entertained. I'm either laughing at the movie and how terrible it is, or I can't sleep, and that's just not fun.
Oh my gosh.
I saw Paranormal Activity, the original movie, when I was 18 in theaters, and I was traumatized for probably about 10 years to never ever watch a scary movie again. So I've been slowly getting back into it, getting over my trauma, my past trauma.
Oh my gosh.
The only horror movie that fits is Aliens, or it's Alien. That's it. That's the only one I could handle and be entertained with. It's the only one. I've not found a single other.
Oh my god. Yeah, my wife likes them, so I think that's might have I was always do we have to watch a scary movie? But I appreciate them if they're good. But if it's just scary and not a good plot or anything like that, I just don't have a good time.
Yeah, I can do without the jump scares. It's the thrilling part that I like more.
Yeah, the twists and everything.
Right.
All right. Well, we apologize, kind of, not really, but kind of, for the 15 minutes of non-Pistons. Yeah, I mean it's August 1st. Like, there's nothing going on. We gotta chop it up somehow. And I mean, we enjoyed it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that too. If not, just go ahead and skip it. Whatever. We're not offended. Let's actually get to some Pistons conversation though. All right. So this is from Coffee. It says, when the Pistons need a bucket during the playoffs this past year, they went to Tobias Harris or Tim Hardaway Jr. So if they make the playoffs this year, do they still need to add a clutch player to fill the role that Tim Hardaway Jr. kind of played there, with him now leaving for Denver?
So I would say, I guess I have two thoughts on this. One, to answer the question, I feel like we already have that guy on the team, and it's obviously Cade. And we also can't forget about Mr. 4-point play in Sacramento, who is returning at Jaden Ivey. So I feel like either of those two can fill that clutch role. But I'll never forget, there was a quote that LeBron had, and this was back in his Cleveland days when he was playing with Kyle Korver. And I think he collapsed the defense on his way to the rim. He kicked it out last second to Korver for a wide open three, who ended up missing the shot. But people criticized LeBron for like not being the clutch guy, not being the one to take the final shot. And I guess I hold the opinion, whether it's the last possession of the game or the first possession of the game, you just need to make the right read regardless. So I'm like, even if, it's Tobias, in the corner who's wide open for three, I want Cade kicking it to him instead of going up with three guys. So I'm more of the opinion, make the right play no matter what point in the game you're in.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think like my gut reaction to this question was kind of similar to what you said. And I guess like overall off season, big picture wise, like I think you want your young guys to just take another leap. Like we saw Cade do that last year, at Ivy a bit when he was still on the floor. So I just think you want to have those players to be the guys who are confident in those moments, and you can go to them and especially if Cade is drawing three defenders or whatever it is, like maybe there's that opens up Ivy or Tobias or Duncan or whoever it is. So I don't know, like I think overall you just want those young guys to be in those situations. Like you want them to take the shot, but that's not always going to happen. And I know Tim Hardaway Jr. was huge for the Pistons at times last season. You don't have him. We'll see what is going on with Malik Beasley and things like that. But I feel like there are enough shot makers to where you can put a 5 on the floor when you have the ball with the shot clock turned off and confidence in making a shot. I mean, I think the preference should be like Cade gets a clean look and takes it, because that's what you want to happen. But like you said, Robbie, that's not always going to be the case. And I think there can be guys around him who you can be confident that can make those shots. So, yeah, even though you lose like pretty much all your veterans besides Tobias, I think that what they brought was filled in pretty like as good as possible. So there's still going to be shot makers, and maybe like you go and add another shooter at the deadline or whatever it might be, if that's a glaring need through the first half of the season. But overall, I think the general plan should be like relying on your quote unquote core to take another jump.
Yeah, for sure. And Robbie, what you were saying there with like, making the right basketball play, I think that's something that sticks with me a little bit with this too. So Cade's obviously shown to be a guy willing to make that type of pass. And I think we can kind of characterize Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr. and their role in last year's playoffs as like two separate things as clutch shot makers and takers. Because when they needed a bucket and they were going to run a play to get a bucket, it was either going to Cade Cunningham or Tobias Harris. So like Tobias Harris absolutely had plays ran for him to score the basketball against the New York Knicks when they needed a basket to be made. Tim Hardaway Jr. was more of an outlet. Like, he was a guy that was willing to take the clutch shots, and he made quite a few of them during that series. But it's not like they were really running looks to get him open shots. It was more they were running an action for Cade or for Harris, and Tim Hardaway Jr. happened to be open, and the guy with the ball made the decision that passing it to Tim Hardaway Jr. is the right move now. So you've got, on the one hand, Harris is your kind of clutch bucket getter in a way, and Tim Hardaway Jr. is more of the options. You just want to have options for a guy like Cade to make the call when he's trying to make a play. Is taking the shot for himself the right move? Do I need to kick it out? If I kick it out, who am I kicking it out to? You want a lot of Tim Hardaway Jr. So I kind of wanted to ask the question to you guys, like, yeah, they added Duncan Robinson, Karis LeVert, like you got Ivy coming back. Maybe who are one or two guys that you think would probably take the majority of those types of kickouts and really excel in that situation for Cade or Harris to make that outlet pass?
Man, good question. So I agree with you that I feel like Harris and THJ were kind of in different roles if we're talking about in the clutch. I feel like Harris, he got a lot of good post up opportunities, backing down a smaller defender in the playoffs. I feel confident that if a double or triple is sent at Cade or sent at whoever's on the ball, that somebody else is going to be open, and no matter who that is, I think you just need to get it to them. Because if these guys are NBA players, wide open three, like to me, there's not a better shot in basketball outside of a dunk than a wide open three. So if it's going to Duncan, even if it's going to Karis, I mean, he's capable of beating, knocking down open 3-point shots. So to me, it's just all about
threes are pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Just as long as as long as they're finding the open man and getting a good quality shot, that's what I'm on board with. But I also think that Cade and Jaden should have more confidence in the clutch going into the season because they both hit buzzer beaters. Because we had Cade with the one in Miami, right, flexing the Detroit across his chest, and so I think Pistons fans and for the growth of the development of our young guys, like we want them in that position to just they come so and far in between that it's like if you get the opportunity, you want to see Cade shooting a last second shot, but I feel like as long as you're getting a good open look, regardless of who it is, like that's more what I'm worried about.
Yeah, if I had to pick one, I honestly could see Karis getting the ball in clutch time situations, whether it's for a catch and shoot or creating for himself. And I'm just saying that because I kind of remember him in those scenarios, like when he was in Brooklyn. So I don't know. I think especially if like Cade is attracting like 2 or 3 defenders, I think Karis is a guy who's shown he can shoot. He can also like create for himself at times. And like, not to say that I don't think Duncan will get the ball for like catch and shoot opportunities at the buzzer or anything like that. I don't know. I could see like Karis kind of being the guy that maybe you go to a bit, and similar to what they did with Tim Hardaway Jr. last year.
And just to throw a wrinkle in there, I'm thinking about like, what if we gave Asar the ball to be the on-ball playmaker and let him try to get to the rim? And if nobody's stopping him, I mean, we're happy with a layup, for Asar, but he's capable of making the outside read. So I would assume if I'm JB Bickerstaff, there's 5 seconds left. I'm like, all right, guys, we know Cade's going to get doubled here. Like, what can we do to counter that? And I wonder with Asar on ball heading towards the rim, if the defense does collapse, then you're kicking to Cade, Jaden, Duncan, whoever it is. So with the versatility, I mean, could Asar be that guy and make that read? I think so, but I don't know. You obviously want the ball in Cade's hands too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Cade's probably going to be the inbounder. So like,
that's true. They do use him as the inbounder a lot. He did that Duran lob. Remember that one too?
Yeah. So like, I mean, I could see them still using him as that. So you got to get the ball into someone. And like, what if he's taken away right after he inbounds? So I think like, obviously the ideal scenario is like you want Cade to make a play, whether it's for himself or one of his teammates. But if it isn't there, like Asar can make the play too, with just like, I don't know. Hopefully he's not taking a three wide open.
Or dribbling too much. Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my thing. Like Asar downhill with like a 5-second count on the clock, getting guys blitzing at him. Like that scares me a little bit in a way that I'm not sure I could really articulate perfectly why it makes me a little uncomfortable, but it does. I think bringing up the inbounder though, like that is something I would like to see. If Asar really takes a step forward as a decision maker this year, like have him inbound the ball so you can actually get it to Cade or Ivy, a guy that you would trust more with the ball in their hands when they're making that sort of look. You could have Asar be the ultimate decision maker on who's getting the ball out of those two when they're doing that sideline out of bounds play. He's got the height, he's got the length. If he can make those good decisions, I'd like to see him start doing that instead of, Cade, or like we saw in the playoffs instead of Duren. That would be good as well. All right, let's go on to this guy here from Coffee again. So ask, what do you think are the chances that Malik Beasley is going to get one of the final open roster spots? And we had a similar question here from Detroit versus Everybody, saying any roster updates for spot number 14. Maybe if the Pistons want to either keep Jenkins on the two-way or pull him up to that spot. So what do we think's going on with the last two roster spots here for Detroit? And what are the odds that maybe Malik Beasley or Dennis Jenkins actually gets the call to fill that role?
Did you guys see recently Pat Beverly on his podcast was talking about Malik? Not that Patrick Beverly is some reliable source, but he ran into him. They were both eating at like the same restaurant or whatever. And Pat said that he was in good spirits. He felt confident about like where the situation was and that he expects to be on a roster this season. So with that, I want to say there's a non-zero chance that they would bring him back, but also I go back to when we were introducing Karis LeVert, Duncan Robinson, and Trajan had an interview with our beat writers. And I remember him saying, like, it's a bummer that we couldn't bring him back, or just made it seem like he shut down that they weren't going to bring him back at all. So the idea of having Beasley back is obviously awesome. But at the same time, I feel like it makes the roster a little like wonky, but also I love 3-point shooting as much as anybody. So spacing to me is like the number one thing that I want on the floor, and he obviously provides it. But the fact that we kind of need like the backup point guard spot, which he's not a playmaker, and the backup power forward spot, he's obviously not playing that. I would say there's a non-zero chance. I just don't. It seems like they've kind of closed that chapter and are moving on, but he does seem confident, according to what people are hearing, that he's going to get cleared. So we'll see.
Yeah. And Malik, I know he's been like posting a ton on his Instagram and stuff. In
Pistons gear and all that still.
Yeah. I think I'm just like operating under the assumption that like he won't be back, and like if he is, it'll be on a short term, like minimum deal. And I don't like, we saw what happened with Terry Rozier. Like he was under investigation, then it stopped, then it started again. So I just think it's a situation that obviously no team wants to be involved in. And I mean, thankfully that news didn't come out a week later when if the Pistons committed a ton of money in a few years to Malik Beasley. I mean, it's just a sad situation all around. And I mean, I hope that he's cleared for his sake and he had no wrongdoing or anything like that. I just think, man, when a player is their name is mentioned in like gambling and stuff, it's just not good. And I always assume the worst until I hear otherwise. So that's sort of how I'm operating right now. But if his name is cleared and the investigation is solved and he wants to be here on a short-term minimum deal, why not? And Wes, what we talked about, I think last week, is just like, I think what the Pistons are doing right now is keeping that flexibility open with those last two roster spots. And maybe it is a two-way guy that plays his way into an NBA deal during training camp. Maybe exhibit 10 guy plays his way into a two-way, and that bumps up one of the two-way guys. So I think right now, like, the flexibility is a good thing. The rotation that they have right now, like the 9-man rotation, seems like you can get by. And I don't think that there's really like a glaring miss. Maybe in the long term, there is a need that you need to fill. But right now in this offseason, I think it's just keeping that flexibility open until someone plays their way into a roster spot or something else opens up where you can go and find that another player to externally also.
All right, let's just play this out really quickly for fun, right? I think we all kind of agree, like, not super likely that Malik Beasley is going to come back and play for Detroit next year. Like you said, Robbie, non-zero chance. It's, of course, possible. It just like Victor's saying here in the live chat, like, why wouldn't a random team take a flyer on him? Yeah, I mean, like, if he can be had really cheaply and you're a contender, you could add a guy that just made over 300 3-point shots last year, guarantee him minutes for a season. Like, that seems like the more likely outcome here than Detroit. But just for fun, let's say that Detroit brings him back on some sort of short-term, low-money deal, right? You mentioned that the roster gets a little wonky. It does. What would that look like? I mean, you got Karis LeVert, you got Duncan Robinson, now you add in Malik Beasley. All three of those guys are loosely playing the same position. So how would that maybe play out, do you think, if that were to happen?
So I was curious. I actually just pulled up Spot Track, and according to them, we still have the cap hold on Beasley at $7.2 million. So the fact I haven't heard anything about like them cutting loose on that. So the fact that if that does still exist, that's kind of interesting. Like if they are leaving the door wide open. But I would say, do we all agree that our starting lineup is probably going to be Cade, Ivy, Asar, Tobias, Duren?
Yes.
Yep.
And so the bench unit in the world where Malik does come back, I would say then is Karis, Beasley, Duncan/Holland, and then Duncan/Holland for the forward spots, basically, with Stu at center. That's a decent 10-man. You're basically giving your backup point guard minutes to Karis then, which honestly, JB has the experience with him a couple years in Cleveland where he played that 6-man role, so he could be used to that. It's just it's a very, very small bench lineup. But it is interesting, and I don't know. We never really saw JB run a 10-man rotation last year. He kind of stuck to 9 for majority of the time. But I just said that I feel like it's a little wonky, and after I spoke that bench lineup out loud, I'm like, I kind of like that bench lineup, honestly. So it's less wonky now that we have talked through it to me.
Yeah, well, maybe the wonkiness could be like are you just putting these 3 combo guards / one that could be a forward with Duncan Robinson, and like who's handling the ball? Like, does that take Ivy out of more on-ball reps with the second unit? But in general, I think like rotations wise is like something's going to happen, whether it's a player not playing how you want them to, or there will certainly be injuries throughout the year. So I see it almost as like a depth move. But like Malik Beasley is just coming off of one of the greatest 3-point shooting seasons ever, pretty much, and was one of the best shooters in the league. Like, he's not going to want to go to a team just for depth, but he did come off the bench last year. Like, I think he'd be open to that role. It's just like, who are you taking minutes from? Like, is it Ron Holland or Asar? Like, you don't really want to do that. So I don't like, I'd love it, just whatever investigation aside, if like he was here, because you can never have too many shooters. But I think it's just like who's going to handle the ball. Maybe it is like Karis in that situation, and it worked out perfectly fine, but like maybe that's not how JB like wants to go about it, I guess.
Did JB play a 9-man rotation in Memphis as well? So memory from when they made the hire, as long as that's solid for me, I don't believe he ever went 10-man rotation with the Cavs.
Agreed.
I can't remember for sure if he ever did with the Grizzlies or not once they kind of got to be competitive, which is obviously the space that the Pistons are in now. Because I think to me, that's the wonkiness. Like you're looking at Ivy as you're starting to back up one. You've got, Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert can, respectively, Robinson can sit at the 2 and the 3. LeVert can be at the 2 and the 1. You got Holland that can play both forward positions, so can Asar. Like there's a lot of flexibility where you could make a very coherent 9-man rotation with the guys they have now. And that would still be true if you got rid of, say, LeVert or Duncan Robinson and replaced them with Malik Beasley. But once they get up to 10, like you don't want to take minutes away from Holland or Asar. They're both kind of looking like the future. Are you going to eat into Jaden Ivey's minutes a little bit? Maybe. Like I don't know. I think that's where my hesitation comes from. Not necessarily the way it would fit if they just ran a 5-man unit off the bench. Because I agree with you, Robbie. Like that doesn't look too bad for short spurts. If you want to go 5 guys out and it's LeVert, Beasley, Robinson, Holland, and Stewart, like that's actually a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I would enjoy that quite a bit. I just don't know I don't think JB would do that. Historically,
it's a lot of guard minutes when your 2 best players are your starting guards.
Right. Yeah, that's the way to put it. Yes, exactly. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Blake? Like, is there a way to make it function, or if you're really stuck on that 9-man, it just wouldn't work? You'd have to have to take a Dan Campbell Lionsism, you'd have to have a bloodbath there with those 3 guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a way to make it work. I just don't know if it's the, I guess, like ideal or like what JB wants to do. And I think if recent memory, like we're taking that into account, like I think that is fair to say overall. But I think just like, especially if you're looking to get more out of Ivy, Holland, Asar, or even Cade, like I just don't know if you're gonna want a second unit without like Ivy in it for the most part. But overall, like I don't know, it's just so hard to say because of this Beasley situation. Like I just feel like he's not gonna be around until it's like there is news that like he's all good, he's gonna sign with someone. Like I think there is a way to make it work though, and especially if you need like whether it's foul trouble, whether it's injuries, whether it's like performance, I think that's the way to make it make more sense. But overall, like it's not, you have a ton of shooters on the floor in that backup like second unit scenario if you do have Beasley involved. And I mean, even if you don't, you can make it work too, which I think is a positive.
All right, let's stick on Beasley just for one more second. This is from Fairland Pathfinder. I guess, is that like, does anyone know if that's a pun on the D&D adjacent like Pathfinder game? I don't know. Like I'm vaguely aware. I don't know for sure, but all right, let us know if that's what this is. But he says, can we sign and trade Beasley? I actually don't know. So
I'll do my best.
What can they do?
Let me do my best Kyle Metz impression here. So I know for sure that if you are going to do a sign and trade, it has to be 3 years. And so the Duncan Robinson sign and trade for us is a good example where his first year is fully guaranteed. And then his second year and his third year with Detroit are very like, it's what, $2 million the second year and $0 million guaranteed. So it's kind of a fake 3-year deal. I can't see Beasley getting anything other than the minimum if he does clear through this. I will say, because if we do still have his cap hold, like what I looked on Spot Track, we can offer him anything between the minimum and that 7.2 million. So I think we would be able to offer him more than any other team could right now if we do bring him back. But we'd have to sign him to a 3-year deal. But I just can't see him getting more than the minimum. And if he can only get the minimum, there wouldn't be a point to sign and trade because any other team could just sign him for the minimum.
Yeah, and I think the 7.2 is because like the Pistons do have his early bird rights after like being around for a season, and that 7.2 number is like the raise he'd get with that. But yeah, I think like that, and the Duncan Robinson example is a great one. Like if there is a path, it would probably have to be that like guaranteed first year, non-guaranteed, partially guaranteed years 2 and 3. But like, I just can't see really any team giving Beasley more than a 1-year deal right now when you consider the circumstances that are on the table.
All right. So it sounds like in summary, the answer is yes, but why? Is that fair to say at this point?
Yeah, I agree.
I think so.
All right, fair enough. So we do have clarification because I'm sure this is the thing that everybody wanted to know. The name Fairland Pathfinder, it is a D&D thing. I was right, so I get a pat on the back for that.
Props to you.
It was a character that he made in middle school, so big callback there. That's awesome. All right, let's go to this one from Detroit versus everybody. Asking if there were any trade or free agency rumors happen this summer that we might not know about. For example, the Pistons were trying to get Collins during that week of waiting for the Dennis Schroeder move. So basically, is there potential that the Pistons were linked to certain players, I guess, during that Dennis Schroeder time period that we just don't quite know yet? And if you guys have any guesses who maybe those could be.
I don't have any outside of anything that we've heard so far, but just to add on to that, it has been real quiet on the Ivy and Duran extensions. Like, I feel like we haven't heard much. We all assume that they're both going to get extended, but I do think Trajan runs a tight ship and there's not many leaks coming out of them. But I do find it interesting because I guess we've seen, J-Dub with the Thunder get extended. We've seen Chet get extended. So extensions are happening. Of course, the restricted free agency market is real bare right now, but I just find it interesting that we haven't really heard anything about either of their extensions. So I would assume they're going to happen, but it's really been quiet on that end.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I'm thinking they might go into restricted free agency at this point, like especially with how we've been seeing this Jonathan Kuminga thing play out, and it's just like not a great market for those players. And like, I don't know, like I think if the front office wants Ivy and Duran to be a part of this team for the long haul, like there is a case to take care of your guys. I mean, not saying like overpay them by any means, but find a solution that works out for both parties. And I mean, honestly, I feel like rumors wise, like I don't know anything that isn't public. I just think like the biggest thing this free agency was we know how much they were like willing to commit to Malik Beasley, and that didn't happen. So they had to scramble last minute. So I think that's like playing a part in not having, I guess, like confirmed rumors on who they were going after, because I think you sort of saw, like, I don't want to say backup plan or plan B, but that's pretty much what it was. Like you saw them go after these players. And I mean, I think the only other one you could look to is like, it seems like they were pretty interested in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but not at the price and the amount of time that he got from Atlanta. And then like when they do that, that opens up Karis LeVert, who they went and got, and you found a way to get Duncan Robinson on a very like friendly deal. I mean, I think like we heard the Malik Monk sign and trade Schroeder thing for so long, like how that played out. I'm sort of just thinking the front office wasn't interested in bringing him in for like taking on his contract. Like he's a good player that would have helped out the team, but it seems like Sacramento's trying to get off his money and Detroit doesn't doesn't want to take it on. So I think just like because of the circumstances on how Beasley played out, like we sort of saw who they were interested in, I guess. And most of them are on the team. Like I feel like the only one they really missed out on maybe was Alexander Walker.
So let's circle back to the extension topic that you brought up there, Rob, because I've been a little, I guess, not like confused, but surprised that we have not heard anything. Like you mentioned, right? It's just been absolutely silent on the extension front for both of these guys. And as I've been thinking about it more, I wanted to run this by both of you guys to see what you think and then get you guys to respond to it as well. But like, is it possible that maybe the Pistons are trying to play a middle game that neither player wants to accept at this point? So the reason I'm bringing this up, usually when Blake, you and I have talked about this on the show, we've talked about it as, all right, the question is, do you want Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duren to be part of this core long-term? Or do you not know that yet and you want to give it more time to play out, right? So you could know for sure. What if the Pistons are kind of in a middle ground where they're thinking, well, look, we don't really think that this is a long-term thing, so we don't want to pay you like a long-term core piece, but we would like you to keep you around on a contract similar to like a Tobias Harris or a larger version of what Duncan Robinson got, where it's exceptionally team-friendly so that you're a very strong trade asset for us as we move into the future. Like not locking them down to be a long-term core piece, but keeping them around on a large enough salary deal where you could stack with some other things and get something more interesting back, which is what it looks like Langdon has done with other guys that are not Cade Cunningham, right? To just put it bluntly that way. So like, could that maybe be the problem here? Have we been looking at this maybe a little bit incorrectly to try and bring it up as that dichotomy between one or the other, either long-term or nothing? Like maybe they're in the middle.
Yeah, I could see it both ways. I think part of me wants them to sign extensions because financially, like, let's say we get Ivy on a 5-year 125, like to have Ivy only making 25 million in his 5th year, 4th year, like that's a very good financial move to have him that cheap when the cap is going to be super high. But to your point as well, I forget the minutes. Blake and I talked about this last time, was like Cade, Ivy, Asar, Duren. I think that 4-man pairing last year saw like 5 minutes together. So to your point, Wes, it's like we're still at a very beginning stage to see if all of our main guys can fit together. And I think you and I share a similar perspective on Asar and Duren, that I don't always like the spacing there. And I feel like they end up in the same spots sometimes. And that is like the most frustrating part of their offense to me. Now in the playoffs, like their little 2-man game with Asar in the dunker spot or cutting from the corner and Duren making those reads looked really well. So I see both sides of it. One, from Trajan, like if you can get these guys locked up long-term on a very reasonable deal, that's just like a good financial move to make. But also, like, we still need to gather more data to see if all these guys can play together. Ivy, 40% shooter last year, but only did it for 30 games or whatever. And Asar was out for a majority of those games because he was coming back from the blood clot. So I see if Trajan wants to wait to gather more data, I see why. I guess my fear is, though, like Blake, with you bringing up the Kuminga situation, I don't want to get so deep that like we're running into issues in restricted free agency too. So it's a hard line to balance right now. I'm glad Trajan is doing it, and not me.
Yeah, and real quick, just to jump in, like that was what was really sticking out to me was like, if you want to walk that line, but also still make the proper long-term financial, right, quote unquote, financial decision for the team, like you'd probably start pushing those values down, right? Like if you could get Ivy on a 4-year 23 per kind of deal, or Jalen Duren 4-year 17 or 18, right? Just a small raise over what Isaiah Stewart got. You still have the time to figure that stuff out. And then you have incredible flexibility if it doesn't work. That's an extremely tradable contract at that point. A starting center for Jalen Duren, for example, like you bring up the Asar and Duren thing, if that doesn't work out after the season, well, then next offseason you're looking at trading a guy that's earning $18 million as a starting center. That's very doable, much more doable than like 25, right?
Yep.
So but that would be potentially a pretty huge hang up, even if they did want to still make that extension. Because I don't know if Duren would take something under 20. I don't know if it'd even be smart for him to do so. If I was his agent, I'd tell him no.
Yeah, he's looking at Nick Claxton's deal, and he's saying, I'm better than this guy. I need more money than him. And that's why he hasn't signed an extension yet, because Trajan doesn't want to give him it.
Yeah, and I think like also Asar becoming extension eligible next season, then Holland the season after that. Like me and Wes talked about last week, like we're pretty comfortable giving Asar some sort of extension, not a max extension, but he deserves a payday. And there comes a point like when you have all these top 5 picks or first round picks years in a row that you want to keep on your team, you kind of have to choose who you're going to pay. And I guess like who you don't want to take up a percentage of your cap for many seasons in the future so you can maintain that flexibility like they've done so far. I mean, it's going to come to a tilting point where like you have to pay these guys. And maybe it means that like one or multiple of them aren't on this team for the future. But if they play themselves into a larger deal elsewhere, I think it's like it comes to a point where like the Pistons have to choose if they're willing to commit that much to that player, or they want to keep it closer to the vest because you've already decided you're going to extend Asar Thompson, and like the plan is to extend Ron Holland the year after that. And not even saying that those guys are going to get max contracts in future years, but we see it happen to teams across the board. Like Oklahoma City's going through it right now, like paying Jalen Williams, and Shea got this like massive extension too. So I think it's just about like, you want Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren to be a part of this team, but it has to be at the right number. And like maybe the Jalen Duren example, like if the team isn't willing to commit to him like what he wants, take it into restricted free agency and see if he gets like an offer sheet, and then the front office's hand will be forced in that scenario.
I will say too, I wonder that I wonder how Trajan feels about Ivey and Duren, considering they're not his guys, right? They're Weaver guys. And with how good Holland looked at Summer League, he's one of Trajan's guys. Like, we know he likes the big defensive wings, so he obviously loves Asar too. I've thought about this before, and I think it involves either Ivey coming on the bench or you've traded him for something else. But the idea of having Cade, Asar, and Ron at kind of the 1, 2, 3 really, really excites me. If you can create a lineup where Cade is like your shortest player, you have 2 stud defenders in Asar and Ron around him. Now, what does power forward and center look like? I have no idea. Hopefully 2 guys who can shoot. But that has crossed my mind of, like, does Trajan really want to prioritize Ron and Asar as kind of those wing guard players because he has more of that, like, I don't know, he likes looking at like those big defensive wings as opposed to Ivey, who hot and cold defensively, Duren hot and cold defensively. So it does make me want, and financially, you're punting the extensions a year or 2 down the road as well. So he's got a lot to think about.
So that segues perfectly, actually, Robbie, into the question I was going to ask you guys. And then I'll just say offhand, I'm right there with you. I've thought about that as well. I just kind of shift Asar and Ron up 1 position respectively, because I look at them as more forwards than wing guards, but like I see it either way. Here's the question I wanted to ask you guys, all right? And since we're running low on time, I will not respond to it. So I will simply ask both of you.
Oh, that's not fair.
I can do it fast if you really need me to, okay? 4 years in the future, rate your confidence that these players will still be on the Pistons roster. Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren. I choose 4 years because that should be year one of a potential Ron Holland extension. And Cade Cunningham is still likely on the roster on that max deal. He's still under that same contract extension he signed. So that shouldn't be an issue. That shouldn't be a problem to even bring up at all. So those 4 guys, Ivey, Duren, Asar, Holland, rate them in order of most confident to be on the roster 4 years from now, and then least.
Blake, do you want this first, or you want me to go?
I can take it just to save you from any backlash.
Give me more thinking time. Yeah.
I'll take it. For me, I think most confident is Asar. And simply just because I think I'm most confident that he is going to get a decent size extension right now. 2, Holland. And I think just because he has the most, maybe like the highest ceiling of this bunch, and he is the youngest player of the bunch, just entering year 2. And then 3, 4, I think I'd have to go Ivey, Duren in that order. And it's pretty close. I just think the reason that I put Duren last is simply because of like what we talked about. And like Robbie brought up the Claxton extension, like maybe Jalen Duren is worth more on the open market than this team is willing to give him. And we know centers oftentimes go for a premium. And if you are giving Asar Thompson an extension, Ron Holland, and who knows what's going to happen with Jaden Ivey, like that just leaves a little bit less room for that. So in short, my answer would be Asar, Holland, Ivey, Duren in that order.
I'm almost the same as you. So agreed on Asar and Ron. I would put Duren next and then Ivey at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And the reason I would put Duren above Ivey is because I think Cade is he needs a lob threat. Like he just plays so well with a lob threat, and Duren is one of the best at it in the league. They obviously have great chemistry. So the reason I say Ivey at the bottom is I feel like guards who are offensive heavy but struggle to defend are just kind of like phasing out of the NBA right now. Like you can look at Beasley only getting $6 million last year, the whole Cam Thomas situation right now. So I just feel like if Ivey's defense doesn't improve and Trajan has Asar and Ron and a 6-7 point guard that he can rely on or trust more defensively, I think he would prioritize that. So I just think Ivey is kind of the odd man out there because he lacks that defensive presence that Ron and Asar we've already seen. But I feel 100% confident Asar will be on this team in 4 years.
For whatever it's worth, my list is exactly the same as yours, Blake. All right, we got 2 questions that I want to get through really quickly. All right, first one, super easy. And Blake, you're going to run point on this one, but this is a voicemail that we got about Cade.
Hi, my question is Cade still a vegan?
If it'll play.
I heard it.
Yeah, I heard it too. So in case anyone didn't hear it, the question was, is Cade still a vegan? And thank you to whoever called in. Let us know your name next time. But appreciate you using the voice line. So we were talking about this right before we jumped on. Haven't seen anything like much in the news about it, but the NBA did release I don't know if it was a TikTok or a short video a few months ago that was like going through the Pistons and being like, what's one thing that fans might not know about Cade Cunningham? And Simone Fontecchio said he's a vegan, and that was a few months ago. So I think that's the most recent news we have of this. So assuming he still is, but maybe something has changed.
You can still get your protein from tofu and chickpeas, so no worries.
That's what I was going to say. I don't care where the protein came from. Whatever got him 15 pounds over the past 4 years is good with me.
Keep doing what you're doing, Cade.
Exactly. Whatever's working is working. I'm cool with that. So this is a YouTube user bringing up what I was talking about earlier about the 9-man rotation thing. So we actually went and looked at the numbers And he says the same is going to hold true here for January, the month of January as well. But he says, I looked at every game in November, and it looks like all but 4 or 5 games, 10 played about 10 minutes. So 10 players got about 10 minutes in those games outside of 4 or 5. And then in all but 2 or 3, at least 10 guys played 5 or more minutes, I believe, in the following month there in December. So he's asking, is JB Bickerstaff really a 9-man rotation guy, or does something else kind of explain this phenomenon?
That's what I was trying to think about. And maybe I just assume JB is a 9-man guy because in Cleveland, like they staggered Darius and Donovan. So one of them's always on the floor, which means, you know, there's somebody else that's just not going to play in a full 10-man rotation. So I feel the same way about that with Cade and Ivy. But I guess I'm trying to think back to November. Like, didn't we still have Wendell Moore on the team? Like Asar wasn't playing yet. So I'd have to go back and look. But like I remember they brought Asar along slowly. So Asar was on a minutes restriction. I don't think it was that early in the season. But I also wonder if that early he's trying to like settle in what his rotation is going to be. But I do remember Wendell Moore he started, right? The first game Ivy got hurt. I think Wendell Moore started that game. And so I don't know. It's good. We'd have to go back and look, but I feel like maybe some injuries or just trying to figure out the rotation that early in the season maybe played a role.
Yeah. And I think also like JB is a little like he caters to the roster that he has, which is a good thing. Like I remember a video I watched of when he was in Cleveland and he was asked about like the too big thing with Allen and Mobley. And I think he even said like, it's not his preference to play 2 bigs, but that was sort of the roster that he has. And like right now, to me, this Pistons roster is like a pretty clear 9-man rotation. So like, I'm just assuming that's how he will operate. But if like Malik Beasley is brought back or there's another move that gives you like 10 guys who you think should get minutes, like maybe it'll go that way too.
Who would be the 10th man? If we were to say that there was a 10th, would it be Sasser? Who
right
Probably
now,
Sasser?
like without Beasley?
Yeah, like if the roster right now, if we did say there was a 10-man rotation, I don't know who the 10th man would be. I guess I assume Sass, but I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Paul Reed will get some minutes.
That was good. I was going to say too. Yeah.
I don't think Paul Reed will necessarily be a part of the like. I'm just thinking it's similar to last year. Like if there's foul trouble or what have you.
I will say I'm not opposed to playing Stu and Reed together if Stu is at the 4, but he has to shoot the ball. He has to shoot the ball if he's playing the 4. Just stand in the corner. You don't even got to move. Hands ready and let it fly if you're wide open and it comes to you.
Yeah. Also, he has to shoot the ball if he's going to keep playing the 5 in my book here too. So he needs to pick that up for sure.
It's his best offensive skill outside of screening. Maybe.
Yeah.
He has to shoot the ball.
Agreed. So real quick, I would say I think you're spot on, Robbie, with the November story. So remember, not only November, you're dealing with injuries, you're dealing with figuring out the roster, you're dealing with foul trouble. You're also dealing with Jalen Duren at his absolute worst as a big man defensively.
That's
right?
true.
For
Slow
stretches
start to the season.
Very early on into the year. I know that Paul Reed got some minutes early on that he then like later did not get. So like that could have been part of it. When it's 10 minutes or more, like generally my rule of thumb when looking at something like this is if it's 10 minutes or more, that's a legitimate trend, right? That is a legitimate, that player got solid minutes in that game. If it's like 5 or less, that's kind of fluky or foul trouble or something else that writes it off. So the fact that in, all but 2 or 3 games in December, a month with quite a few games, actually November too, but a month with quite a few games, you had a couple of guys every now and then getting 5 minutes. Like someone got hurt, someone got in foul trouble, and that's all that was. So I think your story is very enticing without having actually looked at this myself, where JB comes into the year, he's figuring out the roster, you're dealing with foul trouble, you're dealing with guys not performing in new roles in a new system in the way that you want them to. So you're kind of enforcing that, feeling that out. And then by the time you hit December and January, you kind of get into a more regular 9-man rotation with a 10th or 11th guy getting some foul trouble minutes if need be. And that seems to be what's going on here. But, again, I'm not staring at the numbers either. So I can't say that for certain.
Yeah. I mean, I just think right now the roster is just clearly shaping up to 9-man, and if it goes 10 on some nights, I think that's fine. I think it'll be for a multitude of reasons, but overall right now with how the roster is shaking out, and it could change because we know we do have a couple roster spots open. But I see those just being filled more so as like depth piece, and maybe even like leaving one open for flexibility, whether you convert one of your two-way guys later on in the season or whatever it is.
Yep. All right. I leave this up to you both. One more question or close it out.
One more.
We haven't really talked about a super hard endpoint, so I just want to make sure we're good before going on to the next.
Let's do it.
One more.
Okay. This is from Pistons fan in our live chat. Says, how would the Pistons replace Jalen Duren with the lack of cap room and other bigs on the roster? So if worse does come to worse, they don't extend him, they lose him in restricted free agency like you were bringing up earlier, Blake. What do they do? How could they replace that?
I would think if this is restricted free agency, if somebody gives them an offer sheet and Detroit does not want to match it, you can work out a sign and trade with that team to at least to get something back, especially if that team is over the cap. We could use our bird rights on Duren to go over the cap and then make a trade. But I kind of think draft, honestly, like bring in a new guy, preferably who can shoot. But that is I will say it's a great question. Like this could go so many different ways, and Duren right now is such a good fit offensively with Cade. My biggest issue is how he's just not a great fit offensively with Asar. So I do think there's a question in the Pistons front office land of if you had to prioritize one of the two, I think you have to prioritize Asar because of just how athletic and how much he brings it on the defensive end in like every, category out there. Perimeter defense, point of attack. He's even like a weak side rim blocker if you really wanted to put him there. And if that's the case, it's like, who do you find to replace Duren who can fit with Cade, which honestly will really be anybody, but most of all fit with Asar? Because I'm not sure Asar ever figures the jump shot out, and he might best be used in like that power forward role, even if you have a power forward and a center on your team in the rotation who can shoot. Asar, to me, man, he's just like, you can put him anywhere 1 through 4, and he's going like defensively, offensively, just because of how versatile he is. I think it's much easier to prioritize building the rotation and the roster around him and Cade than it is to figure out how Duren and Asar fit together. So that's my biggest worry, I would say, about this roster is the fit between Asar and Duren.
Yeah, I think it's like if there is a new starting center in here, I think you're going to have to go get someone via trade almost. It could be someone in free agency. I just think like the deals that we've seen centers get, I'm not sure if that's going to be on the table, I guess, especially when you have these other extensions coming up. The other option is the draft. I mean, hopefully this team doesn't have a super high draft pick. Like I know
true
for many reasons, but I know when the Ron Holland draft, like the other player we were talking about was Donovan Clingan, and whether you wanted to use a top 5 pick on a center who's had injury history and whatnot. But I think like if they are somewhere between 16 to 24, like it's definitely not a guarantee that you can go and draft someone that is like a shoe-in to to be your long-term starting center, but it happens. We just saw what the Blazers did with Hanson Yang, and I mean, they have Klingon as well. So you can find those guys. I think it's a little bit harder, but I mean, I think overall you're probably looking at like finding someone via trade that's on like a somewhat reasonable deal that another team is trying to get off of, and like figure it out in the long term from there, like behind that player, most likely via draft.
So Sean Haddix brings up a point that's good to clarify. So he says Jimmy and Bam did okay in Miami. Neither could shoot. I call this up because I think it's important we separate. Like, all right, Jimmy and Bam, what these guys were Bam Adebayo, who at the time not a shooter, does not shoot threes, doesn't even attempt them. Right, so he's not only just a bad shooter, he's a non-shooter. And then Jimmy Butler's sitting below league average, somewhere around like low 30s to 30% on good enough volume, talking 3 or 4 per game during that time span, versus like if you could imagine Bam paired with a wing that has the same shot diet as Bam, that's more what you're talking about with Ausar and Duren. So it's not just like 2 bad shooters. It's 2 guys that, like, all else being equal, don't put the shot up and get their shot in a similar variety of ways.
Jimmy wasn't playing in the dunker spot with Bam on the floor like Ausar
or
does.
Flashing to the elbow when you've got pressure out on the wing. Like, they do. Like,
I don't
to go
feel
to
like
the
he
same
was
spot.
a pick and roll threat like we have used Ausar. I will say, just because he brought up Bam, I have thought of, if you are going to consolidate, and if Bam, all of us, like Miami, he doesn't make the playoff, doesn't even make the play in this year. If he does want out, cashing in on Bam, who can shoot, defend, catch lobs, is kind of, you're checking off every box. That, if you want to look for a replacement for Duren, how about Bam? But he's going to be real expensive.
So this actually gets to the follow-up question I was going to ask you guys, and then we can kind of close it out from there. But like, I think if anyone's a regular listener of this podcast, they would know that I very much agree with you, Robbie. Like, I would be of the mind that Ausar's too unique. You can't pass up the ability to build around a guy who's an all-defense type talent, maybe even defensive player of the year type talent, right? Like, you just can't pass that up at such a premium position at the 3-4. However, to devil's advocate that for a second, I do think it's much harder to find a 5 that really works with Ausar, because you're not only, once you like throw Cade into the equation here with him needing a lob threat, you're not only just looking for a guy that can shoot it a little bit, because if we're just talking baseline works with Ausar Thompson, if he can shoot low 30% from 3, done, check the box, it works. But you'd want also a guy who can block some shots and be a halfway decent defender. So now we're talking about a 3-and-D 5. And now you add on to that you probably want a guy who's a lob threat, so that Cade has access to that, Ivy has access to that, and hopefully one day Ron Holland, Ausar Thompson, they have access to that when they're handling the ball. Like, now you're talking about a 3-and-D 5 who's also a lob threat. And there's a really small list of guys in the league right now that would check all 3 of those boxes, even to the minimally acceptable threshold, right? Where you're talking like shooting just above 30% from 3 and is an okay defender and an okay lob threat. There just aren't many of these guys. Now, if you flip it and you say, we want to keep Duren around, it's much easier to say, all right, let's find a less good defender, but who can shoot to start out on the wing. And that's your fix if you want to prioritize Duren. Like, how do you balance that? I guess because that is an incredible challenge. I think, to even the position I admittedly would like them to take.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Order of the Blazing Horse. Harry just commented the same thing. Like, how many stretch bigs are there? There are very few, let alone those that can defend and catch lobs, right? Like, I'm trying to think outside
and
of
cheap,
Bam.
because you're probably looking at guys that
Bam's making
are
50
coming
million
in after Cade, Ausar, and Holland extension.
So I think my biases come from, I think it's much easier to, I feel like it's a cheat code to have a stretch big and instantly like create a good offense. I think it's easier to do it with the stretch big. And because I just value 3-point shooting a lot, I think that's why I look for it. But I think we saw in the playoffs the short roll passes from Duren to Asar in the dunker spot. Like, they're making it work. JB made it work between Mobley and Jared Allen in Cleveland. I just think there's less of teams that have 2 non-shooters in their starting lineup than teams who have 4 or 5. So I think, like, my mind, I'm thinking of like data in the NBA. It's easy if you just get a stretch 5. It's easy to make it work because your floor is spaced out. I do think they can figure it out between Asar and Duren. I guess my bias is just, I think it would be easier to get a player who can shoot rather than have to like create your offense around 2 non-shooters. But it's a fantastic point by both you and Harry. Like, me asking for a center who can shoot, catch lobs, and defend. Outside of Bam, I can't even think of anybody else who really fits that mold. Miles Turner maybe, but he's getting older and he's on Milwaukee now, so I don't know.
Yeah, and that's why I think like the draft addressing it is, and like you're not obviously guaranteed to hit, but it's at least like taking a swing, and maybe you take a swing on another player. But like, this is such a bad example, but like Quentin Post was pretty good for the Warriors last year, and like I don't think he's their long-term starting center by any means, but you can have like a guy like that hopefully, and that's
Jay
why
Huff.
Yeah, Jay Huff, like
too.
That's why those players are so valuable, and it's almost like this ongoing thing of how are you going to solve it, because they're so rare and so like highly coveted.
Also, do we already have a stretch big on our roster?
And Isaiah
Stewart.
Yeah,
I say yes.
Just shoot the ball. Yeah, like I posted a clip on Twitter today. I looked at all 17 of his 3-point makes last year, and a lot of them are like trailer threes or pick and pop threes. And it's like, he has the ability. He can see when the defense goes to, the guard, and he can pop and get up. So I want to see that more. And I think, honestly, like, Stu has about as good of a archetype as a stretch big as you would want. Just so versatile defensively, and if he can shoot that 38% like he did a year ago or 2 years ago, I mean, you might already have a stretch big on the roster. It's just JBB's got to use them.
Yeah. For whatever it's worth, the way I personally answer that devil's advocate question that I brought up, Isaiah Stewart relaxes the wrong criteria in my book. So like, I think the easiest solution, and easy in quotation marks there, because it's not the easiest thing to do. Having a non-shooter on the wing is always going to be a hard thing to work around. But if you could get rid of the defense requirement out of that 5, and you're just looking for an athletic 5 who can shoot over 30% from 3, the list gets a lot bigger pretty quickly. Because now even, truthfully, you're not even just looking at pure 5s. You could also look at some combo bigs that are just big enough to play the 5 if we're relaxing that defensive assumption, and then critically pushing and funneling the entire defensive scheme to Asar Thompson. I think that if this is ever going to work, that's how it has to be. You're going to have to settle for a 5 who can shoot and catch some lobs, but not defend. And then you have to rely on Asar Thompson covering all of the rest. So I don't know if that means you need to get another guard that can keep Asar kind of at the 3-4 situation, where you can have him roam a little bit as a weak side shot blocker. I don't know if you want to rely on Ron Holland in that way, or someone like him, but it's like the full maximized version of him one day, like that sort of thing. To me, that's the only way it could really simply work without having to jump through a lot of hurdles. But again, like it's still pretty difficult to do.
If we go
and
back
as YouTube
to
brings up, YouTube user brings up, Asar's not been a lob threat. He's done it a couple of times.
Way more of a
probably
transition
on
lob
2
threat.
ends.
Yeah, I would say if we go back to our Cade, Ron, Asar scenario, if you're able to put Ron as the point of attack defender, and then Asar can be your weak side rim blocker, that, I guess, you're kind of making it work in regards to You still have a point of attack defender. You still have somebody who can contest at the rim. It's just not coming from your center position anymore. It's interesting
And it's
thought,
just
though,
so
for
tough.
sure. Yeah,
It's so
you want a
tough because,
Sauron
like,
ball.
yeah, he's also so dang good on like Trae Young and Luka, and then now you're
Yeah.
going to ask him to be Draymond, and it's like he can, but is it as valuable? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough spot.
Yeah, 100%. I think the roster will be fairly like it's not its final product, and obviously there's a lot of unknowns. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, as far as versatility, I think is just such like a value, and it's just like how they use it, and it's tough because there's so many ways that you can use it. But all right, I know we went a little long. I'll close us out, but before I do that, Robbie, thank you for coming on again.
For sure.
Please, I know you just did a couple weeks ago, but let everyone know where they can find you and anything else that you might want to plug.
Yeah. I am Bobby Buckets 313 on both Blue Sky and Twitter. Less on Blue Sky now and trying to get back into Twitter. So I would follow me over there, but make sure you guys stay tuned to DetroitBadBoys.com as the season approaches, where you can read all of our writing and all of our expertise on the Pistons season.
Yes, definitely.
Apologies to anyone who's listening on podcast and couldn't see that fantastic gesture that he did there for the perfection and expertise. That is fantastic. And
I got to watch on
agree
YouTube,
with it
baby.
totally. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and shout out to our mystery caller who used the voice line. Reminder that anyone can call that number, ask a question, hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.